The night was alive with chaos as the air carried the muffled roar of a lion trapped behind rusted iron bars. Shadows twisted across the crumbling zoo walls, the echo of claws scraping against wood cutting through the silence. Emma said, "God, he's panicking. His cry is shaking the ground." Her flashlight trembled in her grip, its beam slicing the humid darkness, landing on the silhouette of the lion thrashing violently against the chains. James whispered, "It's worse than I imagined. This cage is collapsing around him." The metallic snap of steel rang out, and the animal's roar filled the air with fury and despair. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the ground vibrated as though the entire enclosure might give way. Emma pressed her hand to the bars, her voice breaking. "We don't have time. If he breaks free the wrong way, he'll die before we reach him." James clenched his jaw, sweat dripping down his face as his eyes locked on the bloodied pole. The air smelled of rust, sweat, and raw fear. In that moment, the line between rescuer and prey blurred, and every second felt like the last. The silence after the lion's roar was deafening, each second carrying the weight of dread. Emma steadied her breath, whispering, "He's tearing himself apart." James nodded grimly, his eyes darting to the weakened beams. The storm outside rattled broken glass panes, the air sharp with the stench of rust and blood. The lion pressed its head against the bars, panting, eyes wild with pain yet burning with stubborn will. Emma said, "He's not giving up, and neither can we." Her voice cracked as she gripped the bars tighter. James muttered, "One wrong move, and this cage collapses, crushing us all." Their words were small against the echo of chains grinding, every sound amplifying the urgency. This wasn't just survival, it was a race against the cage itself, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown. The floor beneath them groaned as though warning of collapse. Emma's flashlight beam revealed deep cracks snaking across the foundation. James whispered, "The structure's failing." The lion growled low, its breath fogging the damp air. Emma whispered urgently, "We can't wait, every second is making it worse." Thunder rumbled outside, vibrations resonating through the rusting cage. James clenched his jaw, muttering, "If the ceiling comes down, there's no way out." The storm intensified, water dripping onto the lion's bloodied paw, the animal recoiling in pain. Emma's heart pounded, her mind screaming between fear and resolve. A deafening creak split the air as one of the beams above snapped, sending sparks and debris crashing to the floor. Emma ducked, her breath sharp with terror. The lion recoiled, roaring with pain and fury. James shouted, "We need to move now." His voice echoed in the cavernous ruin. Emma's hands shook, but her resolve hardened. She whispered, "He's terrified. We can't leave him like this." Dust coated her hair, the air choking with grit. James steadied her shoulder, his face hardened. "Then we're going to need more than courage." The storm outside howled louder, rattling the broken glass panes like warning drums. Emma's voice trembled as she whispered, "If we wait, he dies here." The lion's breathing grew ragged, its chest heaving against the chains. James clenched his fists, jaw set, and muttered, "Then tonight, we break him free." The air grew heavier with every word, as if the zoo itself leaned in to listen. Emma's hand hovered near the lock, sweat slick on her palm. The lion's amber eyes met hers, wild but pleading. The world narrowed to one fragile bond, forged in terror and defiance, unshaken even by the collapsing world around them. The storm outside faded into a dull roar, but the sound of the lion's ragged breathing filled the air with crushing weight. Emma crouched near the bars, her eyes fixed on the animal's wounded paw. "Easy," she whispered, "he suffered far too long." The lion turned its gaze toward her, wild yet searching, as if measuring whether this stranger meant harm or hope. James stood behind, arms crossed, his silence heavy with doubt. He muttered, "You've seen animals in worse shape. Why is this different?" Emma's chest tightened, her mind flashing to the memory of a scar that still traced her own wrist. She pressed her hand against the cold bars and said softly, "Because I've lost one before." Her voice cracked, trembling with hidden grief. The lion's eyes blinked slowly, his head bowing as though he recognized the weight of her confession. James sighed deeply, shifting uneasily, his jaw working as if he wanted to argue but couldn't. The moment sealed a bond, fragile yet undeniable, tethering Emma to the lion's fate. The silence stretched, only broken by the storm's distant growl. Emma's flashlight flickered across the lion's scarred body, every wound telling a story of torment. James finally spoke, his voice rough. "He's dangerous, Emma. He could turn on us." She shook her head quickly, eyes locked on the lion. "No, he's desperate. He's asking us to see him, not fear him." James frowned, stepping closer, his boots crunching over broken glass. The lion's ears twitched, muscles tightening, and Emma lifted her voice gently. "Easy, boy. We're not your enemies." Her hand lingered on the cage bars, fingers trembling as memories clawed their way into her mind. Another cage, another roar, another life lost. She whispered, "I won't lose him too." James studied her face, realizing her resolve was far deeper than simple duty. The storm cracked lightning through the glass ceiling, illuminating the raw tension between fear and trust. Emma exhaled slowly, her chest heavy with a mixture of fear and determination. "Look at him, James," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He's fighting to survive, not to harm." James rubbed the back of his neck, pacing nervously. "Survival makes beasts dangerous, Emma," he replied, his eyes darting toward the lion's claws scraping lightly against the stone floor. The lion didn't lash out, but instead leaned heavily against the bars, its body trembling under exhaustion. Emma swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I've carried this guilt for years. Maybe saving him is the only way I forgive myself." James paused, staring at her, the stormlight flashing across his face. His voice softened. "This isn't about the lion anymore, is it?" Emma's silence was answer enough, her hand never leaving the bars as the lion's amber eyes locked on hers in quiet, fragile trust. The zoo creaked under the weight of rain, every drip echoing like a reminder of time running out. James said sharply, "Even if we free him, Emma, how do we move him? We don't have the tools, and he won't follow willingly." Emma clenched her jaw, her voice fierce. "We make him trust us, that's the only way." James shook his head, muttering, "Trust doesn't build in a night." The lion groaned low, collapsing onto its side, chest heaving. Emma's heart lurched, her voice cracking. "He's giving up. If we don't act now, he won't last until morning." James stared at her, frustration wrestling with helplessness, before he growled, "Then you better have more than hope." Emma leaned forward, whispering gently to the lion, her words trembling but resolute. "We'll get you out, no matter what it takes." For a long moment, the only sound was the lion's strained breathing. Emma whispered, "You're not alone anymore." The words hung in the air, fragile but defiant. James watched her, the hardened lines in his face softening against the stormlight. He sighed, muttering, "You're going to destroy yourself over this, Emma." She didn't look away, her eyes locked on the lion's weary gaze. "Maybe," she said softly, "but I won't walk away this time." The lion blinked slowly, pressing its mane faintly against the bars, as though acknowledging her. The storm howled again, but Emma's resolve was louder in her chest. James lowered his head, running a hand over his stubbled jaw, finally whispering, "Then I'll stand with you. But if this goes wrong, it's on us both." The fragile alliance deepened, built on loss, guilt, and the faintest flicker of hope. The storm raged harder, battering the glass ceiling until shards threatened to rain down. James cursed under his breath, his flashlight sweeping across fractured beams. "This place is seconds from falling apart," he muttered. Emma's gaze remained fixed on the lion, whose breaths grew harsher with every passing moment. "If we don't move him now, he won't last the night," she said firmly. The lion strained against the chains, his mane dampened by dripping rain, eyes blazing with desperation. James muttered, "We're not ready, Emma. And if we make one wrong move, we're finished." Emma's chest heaved, her determination clashing with fear. "Then we don't make mistakes," she whispered fiercely. The ground shook as another beam snapped, sending echoes across the hollow enclosure. The urgency became a living presence, pressing against them from every side. In the silence between crashes, the lion's ragged cry became the only sound that mattered. James' frustration boiled over, his voice sharp. "You think compassion alone will break chains? We don't have tools, Emma." She snapped back, her words trembling but firm. "Tools don't build trust. He needs to believe in us first." The lion slammed his paw against the ground, the clang of steel echoing like thunder. Emma flinched but pressed closer, her palms steady on the bars. "I know you're scared," she whispered to the lion, her breath catching in her throat. James dragged his hand through his hair, muttering, "This is madness." The storm outside howled in agreement, shaking the broken panes. Yet in the suffocating tension, Emma's voice pierced through, not pleading but promising. "I won't abandon you, not like before." James stared at her, realization dawning that her fight was as much against her own ghosts as against the cage itself. The ceiling groaned again, dust raining down as the cage shifted. James muttered, "We're running out of time." Emma's fingers dug into the rusted bars, her breath ragged. The lion's roar shook the walls, his body slamming against the steel. Emma whispered, "He doesn't want to fight us, he just wants out." James paced, his boots crunching over broken debris. "And what if he turns on us once free?" he demanded. Emma's voice rose, louder than the storm. "Then at least he'll die fighting for freedom, not wasting away in chains." Her words stunned even herself, trembling in the air like lightning. James froze, his chest heaving with unspoken conflict. The lion's amber eyes locked on them both, its trembling frame vibrating with both fear and defiance. Emma whispered softer, "We owe him the chance." The storm's roar outside answered like a judge's gavel, sealing their fate. The floor quaked beneath them, loose stones rolling across the dirt. James shouted above the storm, "If the roof falls, there's no saving him or us." Emma refused to move back, her eyes locked on the lion. "Then we stand here until it's done," she cried. The lion collapsed onto its side, breath shallow, blood seeping from his paw where the chain tore deeper. Emma knelt, her hand against the bars, whispering fiercely, "Stay with me. I won't let you go." James clenched his jaw, his face torn between rage and helplessness. "Emma, you're breaking yourself on something that might already be lost," he said. She shot him a look so sharp it silenced him. "I lost once before," she muttered, her voice trembling. "I will not lose again." The lion blinked slowly, head resting weakly against the steel, his amber eyes flickering with fading strength. The storm cracked violently, lightning illuminating every fracture in the crumbling zoo. Emma pressed her forehead against the bars, whispering, "You're not alone, not this time." The lion's chest rose weakly, each breath a battle. James exhaled sharply, his voice finally breaking. "Emma, if you're set on this, then I'll stand with you. But understand, it could cost us everything." Emma turned, her eyes wet but blazing with resolve. "Everything's already at stake, James. Saving him is the only choice." The lion stirred faintly, its mane brushing against the steel where her hand rested. For the first time his eyes softened, no longer wild, but almost pleading. The storm outside screamed louder, yet inside the cage, the silence between rescuer and beast carried more weight than thunder. Their fight was no longer against chains alone. It was against time, fate, and their own fears. The storm quieted for a moment, leaving a suffocating stillness inside the zoo. Emma's beam fell across the lion's flank, where faint scars cut in unnatural patterns. She froze, her breath catching. "James," she whispered sharply, "these aren't from the cage. Someone did this to him." James leaned closer, his face grim as realization settled in. "You mean torture," he muttered, voice shaking with anger. Emma nodded, her throat tight. "This wasn't an accident, James. He wasn't just abandoned, he was beaten." Her hand clenched against the bars, fury bubbling beneath her grief. The lion's eyes flickered, and his body trembled as though remembering pain long etched into his bones. James growled, "If someone left him here like this, Then they wanted him to die slow. Emma's eyes narrowed, her heart burning with rage. Then saving him isn't just rescue, she said. It's justice. The storm cracked lightning again, illuminating truth as bitter as it was undeniable. Emma's pulse pounded as her mind replayed the scars. Her voice trembled with rage. Someone used him for sport, she spat, the words venomous. James cursed under his breath, slamming his fist against a rusted beam. All this time I thought the cage was his prison, but the real chains were cruelty. The lion pressed his forehead against the bars, as though silently confirming her words. Emma reached forward, her palm soft on the steel, whispering, "They took everything from you." James exhaled harshly, muttering, "And now we're risking everything to undo their sins." Emma's eyes flashed, fierce in the dim light. "We don't risk," she said, voice cutting sharp, "we fight." The storm howled louder. The zoo trembling like it too bore the weight of hidden truths. James finally nodded, his resolve hardening into stone. "Then we fight together." James muttered darkly, "If this was cruelty, then someone left him here on purpose." His words hung heavy in the damp air. Emma's jaw clenched, her mind racing. "It means we're not just fighting chains and storms," she whispered. "We're fighting the people who put him here." The lion groaned, his body shifting weakly, the sound like a broken cry for freedom. Emma pressed her head against the bars, whispering, "I've carried ghosts, but his scars are alive." James placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice low, "Then saving him exposes them." Emma's lips trembled as she whispered, "Then we'll expose them together." The storm's thunder rolled, each crack of lightning throwing their shadows across the broken walls, like warriors preparing for battle. The truth burned in Emma's chest until her words cracked out. He wasn't born free. Someone owned him. James stiffened, eyes narrowing. "An illegal captive," he muttered, disgust dripping in his tone. Emma's voice trembled as she whispered, "This isn't his first cage." The lion growled faintly, his body arching as if protesting the memories seared into his flesh. Emma wiped tears from her cheek with the back of her hand, her face hardening into steel. "Then freeing him isn't just release," she said, her tone sharp. "It's undoing years of cruelty." James' gaze softened toward her, and for the first time he whispered, "Emma, maybe this is why you're here. Maybe this is what you've been waiting for." Her eyes glistened as she whispered, "Then I won't waste it." The storm shrieked overhead, but Emma's voice cut stronger. "Every scar on his body is a story of cruelty," she said fiercely, "and tonight we write the last chapter." James stared at her, his doubts drowned by her fire. "Then we take him back from them," he said firmly. The lion lifted his head weakly, pressing his nose closer to Emma's hand, his breath hot against the bars. Emma gasped softly, whispering, "He's still choosing to believe in us." James exhaled sharply, gripping a beam so tight his knuckles whitened. "Then we can't let him down." The storm roared again, lightning flashing like war drums. For the first time, Emma smiled through her tears, whispering, "He's not broken, and neither am I." The storm reached its fury as beams snapped and walls groaned. Emma shouted above the noise, "Now or never, James." The lion roared, the sound rattling the entire structure. James grabbed a crowbar from the debris, muttering, "This is insane." Emma's hands trembled as she forced them steady on the rusted lock. "He's not waiting for miracles," she said fiercely. "He's waiting for us." James wedged the crowbar into the lock, muscles straining as metal screamed. The lion's ember eyes followed their every move, his body shaking with pain and fire. Sparks flew as steel bent, dust choking the air. Emma whispered, "Hold on, boy. Freedom's coming." The storm answered with violent thunder, as if echoing the battle cry. The crowbar slipped, James grunting as the rusted lock refused to give. "Damn it!" he roared, his arms shaking. Emma steadied him, her voice sharp, "Don't stop. He needs us now." The lion's paw slammed against the floor, chains rattling with violent force. The storm hammered harder, glass shattering above in sharp explosions. Emma's flashlight beam wavered, but her voice didn't. Fight with me, James. Don't fight the cage. Fight for him. James roared with fury, pulling again, his muscles screaming with effort. With a screech of breaking steel, the lock finally cracked. Emma gasped, tears blurring her sight as the chain loosened. He's almost free, she whispered, her words trembling like the storm. The cage shuddered as another beam snapped, crashing inches from James' boots. Emma screamed, "Move!" He stumbled back, coughing through dust. The lion roared again, his chains tugging violently. Emma's heart hammered, her voice breaking. "We're losing time. He's dying in there." James grabbed the crowbar again, rage burning in his eyes. "Then we finish this," he growled. Emma dropped beside him, pressing her shoulder into the steel, as if sheer will could bend it. Together they pulled, their grunts echoing louder than thunder. The cage screeched as the door tore open by inches. The lion lunged forward, chains snapping, his breath hot against freedom. Emma gasped through her tears, whispering, "Come on, boy, just one more step." The final lock burst with a shriek, the door swinging outward violently. The lion staggered, his body trembling, but his eyes blazing with fire. Emma fell to her knees, gasping, her tears streaming freely. James stood over her, panting, crowbar dropping from his hands with a metallic clang. "He's free," he whispered, his voice stunned. The lion stepped forward slowly, mane wet and ragged, each breath shuddering through his chest. He stopped inches from Emma, his amber eyes locked with hers. Her heart froze, terror and awe clashing in her veins. James hissed, "Emma, back away." But she didn't move, whispering, "I promised him freedom, not fear." The lion exhaled heavily, lowering his head. For the first time, silence overpowered the storm. The storm's rage faded into distant rumbles, but inside the ruin, the moment hung eternal. Emma whispered, "You're free now." The lion lowered his head, amber eyes softening, breath deep and steady. James' hands trembled at his sides, his jaw slack with disbelief. "He should have attacked," he muttered, his voice shaken. Emma's tears glistened as she smiled through exhaustion. "He's not our enemy, James. He never was." The lion pressed closer, mane brushing against the bars one final time before stepping fully into the open. Thunder rolled far away, as if bowing to his release. Emma placed her hand over her chest, whispering, "We didn't just save him, he saved us too." James exhaled slowly, shoulders sagging, the storm inside them finally still. The broken zoo stood silent, but in that silence, freedom roared. The storm eased into a distant growl, leaving the zoo soaked in rain and silence. Emma's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, as she watched the lion take his first unchained steps. His paws pressed uncertainly into the wet ground, leaving trails of blood mingled with rainwater. James muttered, his voice hushed with awe, "He's really free." Emma nodded, her lips trembling as tears slipped down her cheeks. "We gave him back what was stolen," she whispered. The lion lifted his head, mane dripping, amber eyes shining not with fear, but with fierce dignity. He turned toward the shattered cage, then back to them, as if acknowledging the bond forged in fire. Emma's heart swelled with both joy and ache, knowing this was a goodbye written before it even began. Rain pooled on the cracked floor as Emma whispered, "He knows this place was never his home." The lion paused at the open threshold, nostrils flaring as if breathing freedom for the first time. James wiped grime from his brow, shaking his head. "He won't survive alone out there without help." Emma's gaze hardened with quiet strength. "But he deserves the chance to try," she said. The lion's tail flicked, his muscles tense, his body heavy but alive. He looked back once, amber eyes catching Emma's. In that gaze she saw more than an animal, she saw resilience carved by pain. Emma whispered softly, "Run, and remember you're not broken." James broke the silence, his voice low but raw. "You've carried ghosts, Emma, but you don't need to anymore." She glanced at him, her lips trembling as she fought back tears. "Maybe he's not the only one who needed saving," she admitted softly. The lion took a few steps forward, his body trembling yet resolute. Emma whispered, Every scar tells a story, but tonight his story changes. James laid a hand on her shoulder, firm and steady, his voice gentle. So does yours. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the words settle like balm on an old wound. The lion stopped again, turning to watch them a final time, the silence thicker than the storm had ever been. The air hung heavy with the smell of wet earth and broken steel. Emma whispered, "This isn't an ending, James. It's a beginning. For him, for us." James nodded, his eyes lingering on the lion's fading silhouette. "Freedom always comes at a price," he murmured. Emma's voice steadied, carrying quiet resolve. "And it's one worth paying." The lion's mane caught the dawn's first rays, turning gold as if the storm had crowned him. Emma inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of guilt lifting. James placed his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, both of them sharing a silence no words could match. For the first time, Emma felt whole. The lion disappeared into the mist beyond the zoo walls, his form dissolving into freedom. Emma's hand lingered on the broken bars, her chest heavy with ache but lifted by purpose. She whispered, "He carries my ghosts with him now." James exhaled slowly, his eyes softening. "And you let them go?" Emma smiled faintly, exhaustion etched in every line of her face. "For the first time, I think I did." The ruined zoo stood behind them, broken and silent, but the world ahead was wide and open. Together, they turned from the cage, stepping into dawn. Their fight had ended, but its meaning would live far longer than scars. The world seemed to still as the storm faded completely. Emma stood quietly, her hand pressed to her heart. James broke the silence with a whisper. "He's gone, Emma." She shook her head gently. "No," she murmured. "He'll never be gone. Not from here." She tapped her chest, eyes glistening. The sound of distant wings cut through the dawn sky, a flock of birds scattering toward the horizon. James sighed, his face softening. "Maybe that's what freedom sounds like." Emma closed her eyes, letting the silence linger. Emma turned toward the shattered cage one last time. The broken steel glistened with rain, now a monument to the battle they had fought. She whispered, "This place will remember him." James stepped closer, laying a hand on her shoulder. "No," he said softly, "we will." Emma smiled faintly, closing her eyes as tears streamed down. The air was no longer heavy. It was alive with quiet hope. The storm had taken so much, but it left them with a truth stronger than iron. Freedom was worth every scar. The zoo lay silent, its ruins echoing with memories of cruelty, but Emma's voice cut through with gentle strength. "Chains break," she whispered, "but so do hearts. Tonight we mended both." James lowered his head, whispering, "And maybe ourselves." The silence was sacred, filled not with grief but with purpose. Emma wiped her face, a quiet fire burning in her eyes. "There will be others," she said, her tone resolute. James met her gaze, nodding slowly. "Then we'll be ready." The dawn spread wider, golden light breaking over the ruined zoo. Emma whispered, "His roar will stay with me forever." James smiled faintly, his voice quiet. "Then maybe that's how freedom lives on." They both stood in silence, their shadows stretching long into the light. Emma's heart ached but carried strength, as though the lion's spirit now lived within her. She exhaled softly, eyes lifting to the horizon. Emma turned away from the broken cage, her voice quiet but steady. "He's not in chains anymore, James. And neither am I." James looked at her, his lips curving into the faintest smile. The zoo behind them lay silent, but the world ahead pulsed with life. Together, they stepped into the morning, leaving ruins behind. The sound of the lion's roar seemed to echo faintly in the distance, not in fear, but in triumph. Emma closed her eyes, whispering, "That's the sound of forever."